Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Cover 2 podcast. I am Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And guys, we have another big football show for you today, primarily the National Football League. Jared and I's teams are looking to be at the top of the NFL standings.
At the top.
Okay. Looking to be, and I think you know who I'm talking about when I say that, because one of our teams is the only remaining undefeated team in the National Football League. But we will get into that later. We're also going to talk about a little tiny bit about college football, because we got two teams shooting up to the top of the rankings, just like our Cowboys and Cardinals, and it doesn't look like there's many other teams that can compete with them. So not as much college football on today's podcast, and a lot of NFL, because boy, do we have a lot to talk about that's not even game stuff. Jared Smith, we got a lot of background stuff to talk about in the NFL, stuff you really shouldn't be talking about, coaches, stuff like that. It's annoying, but we got to get into it. But first, I wanted to start the podcast again just to get you guys going and to keep the knowledge up on my brother Chase Nenad. As you remember, last week we started this show with me kind of being a proud brother and a happy brother, discussing the fact that he went 1 for 1, and what I mean by that, he had one catch for one touchdown last week in his debut in college football for the Yale Bulldogs. That's why I'm repping the hat. Well, last week they played Lehigh. I couldn't even tell you what their mascot is. They blew them out. But my brother, he went again 1 for 1. He scored a touchdown again on his only catch of the game, and it wasn't like they didn't target him this game. They actually targeted him quite a bit. There was penalties, stuff like that. He was getting PI'd. It seemed like they'd watched film and didn't want him to do the stuff that he did last week, and then he did it again. So he's 2 for 2 on the season with 2 touchdowns, 2 catches. I couldn't be more proud, and I just wanted to let you guys know again, you are missing some primetime football at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, guys, okay? And I'll tell you this, last week, Jerry, and we'll get into this in a second, I watched, obviously, Georgia and Arkansas, and there was nothing much to watch in that game. So I ended up, getting to watch my brother's game and getting to watch that more in full. And I put that on the big screen because of how disastrous that number 2 versus number 8 matchup was. So, hey, every 9 a.m., every 9 a.m. Saturday or 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 a.m., wherever you are watching these games, put them on. You're seeing some good stuff. I can't remember who they're playing this week. I think it's another Ivy League opponent. But, yeah, some good stuff. They actually play UConn on CBS pretty soon, too. So you guys are missing stuff.
Let's go Yale.
I know, right. It's kind of crazy. But, yeah, so I just want to get that out of the way. And just, once again, proud brother sitting here. I'm repping the Yale hat. I didn't go full Cardinals today. Going ridiculous. I had to be a little professional and put on a different hat. But, yeah.
Shout out to Chase, man.
Absolutely. Jared, let's get into the NFL. Let's just jump right into it. Last night we had Monday Night Football. I don't know where you guys are watching, like I said, but we were watching here in Orange County in Southern California, and it was nuts. I mean, literally, I guess the fact that the Bolts were on Monday Night Football meant that there was thunder and lightning everywhere, and there was just a rainstorm here in Orange County. It was a fun atmosphere to watch a football game, and obviously we lost the feed at the bar I was watching for the entire game for 10 minutes at one point. I felt like I was on the East Coast watching this game. Jared, what was your thoughts on the game and just the weather going on here outside our apartments and the bar and stuff?
Yeah, no, I mean, I wasn't surprised by the lightning and the thunder. I knew that was coming because on my drive home, I started to see some sprinkles. I saw the clouds. And I was like, oh, all right, it's going to be one of those nights, no big deal. And then, I get home, making some dinner, watching the quick pregame on ESPN. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, yeah, weather delay. The game's going to be delayed like 45 minutes. And I'm like, wait a minute. Time out. Isn't SoFi Stadium a dome?
Yeah.
Like last time I checked, there's a roof over these people's heads, right? So they start to, escort all the players back to the locker room. They say they don't want any players on the field warming up or throwing or doing anything like that. But yet the fans are still sitting in their seats. They haven't told the fans to go, back inside near the concession stands. They're staying in their seats. The Monday Night Football crew, right, and all the other broadcasters and news networks, they're still on the field, right? So it was, to me, I'm just like, what what's going on? This is a dome. Last time I checked, like it's not an outside stadium, outside arena where some, lightning is actually going to strike down on the field. So I don't know. I was a little taken back. Twitter was going off on the NFL for postponing the game, basically mind boggled as to why, in a dome this game was postponed, especially if you're on the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
On the East Coast, the game already starts at 8:15, 8:20,
Mhm.
and now you're postponing it to almost 9 o'clock, to where you're going to be up past midnight watching the game if you're a Chargers or Raiders fan or just a diehard NFL fan in general. So yeah, I feel bad for all of our people on the East Coast there that had to stay up super late or that chose to watch the game. We at least, the game ended at 9 or something like that, which was a little later. But yeah, that one took me back. I don't understand. Apparently, there are some openings like on the sides of the stadium
Isn't
to
that
where
any Jared? Isn't that any stadium? Like why? Like right? You got to have a door to open up to get into places, but like
I don't know. I don't understand. I don't get it. Like,
it was
and
fun.
Roger Goodell was there. He was in one of the suites. He was there for Monday Night Football, and they showed him for a minute. And so it's like, hey, Roger, like, what's going on? Like, call NFL headquarters and tell him to get this game going, right?
Yeah.
Like, you saw the players. You saw John Gruden when he was on the sideline. He literally has his helmet, his headset on. He's literally ready to go, right? Like, ready for kickoff. And then he hears the news, and the referee comes over and tells him he's got to take his team to the locker room, and he's just looking dumbfounded, like, what are we doing? My guys all just warmed up. Now you want them to go back, sit in the
Well,
locker room, get cold?
yeah.
Like, what are we doing?
First of all, Jared, like, why do the people down at the field have to go in and waste time too and wait it out when they're saying that the only reason they delay the game is because the top of the stadium is exposed? What is the lightning bolt going to come through and like sneak its way through like everybody and shock somehow John Gruden down at the field?
Never
Like,
know.
yeah, it was a weird start. It was a weird start, Jared. And I think, two things to say about this. Number one, I think when you talk about the East Coast people, I think a lot of people turned this game off based on what the score was
I would have.
at halftime. Yeah. And number two, there's a lot to talk about here with the Chargers and Raiders because I see a clear difference between the two teams. Right, Jared? We got on here before we're actually starting the podcast, and we immediately started talking about how, like, hey, the Raiders are becoming this like second half only team, it seems like. And so I want to pose this question to you, Jared. Like, when you look at what happened last night, do you think it was the delay, or do you think the Chargers are just a clear better team than the Raiders, and the Raiders are, maybe a little bit frauds to start this season, and that their opponents were just not up to the billing to begin this season? And that what do you think about the Chargers and Raiders and the AFC West realistically after watching that game?
Well, I think you're definitely right. There's a clear distinction between the Chargers and the Raiders, right? I don't think that's a question at all, in my opinion. The Chargers obviously sitting atop the AFC West, more so because the Chiefs have had a slow start. But you said an interesting word, and you said frauds. And a lot of times we've said that word multiple times on this podcast. We almost say it every week, especially when we're talking about college football. The Raiders, I don't want to, they're not frauds. They're 3-1, right? They beat the Ravens on Monday Night Football to open the season. They then beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 2 when we were still, trying to figure out the Steelers. I think now after week 4, we have a better understanding of the Steelers game. So maybe that Raiders win in Pittsburgh wasn't as impressive, but still a West Coast team traveling to the East Coast, having to play an early 10 o'clock game. Those are tough in general, no matter who you're playing. So I'm still going to give the Raiders some credit for that 3-0 start. And I think they're still a good team. So they're not frauds, in my opinion. It's just, I think they ran up against a much better team, right? In the Chargers. Last thing I'll quickly say, because to me, this isn't really much of a debate or much of even a discussion. I don't want to hear about the delay. Like, these are professional athletes. Like, figure it out, right? Like, like I said, when I was watching the extended pregame, the end, when the broadcasters were still on the field, when all the players and everyone else had to go in the locker room, right? Booger McFarland suggested that because it was going to be like a 45 minute delay, that the players take off their uniforms, take off their tape, right? And like then retape and put on back stuff once the game gets closer to kickoff. And to me, that was a little mind-boggling. It was like, Booger, you played football. Like, do you understand how much tape and how much time goes into these athletes just getting ready? Like, it would take another hour and a half before all these players were able to retape their ankles, their hands, whatever it is they tape up. So, that to me was a little interesting by a former college and NFL player to come out and say that. That was a little curious there. But the delay to me for professional athletes, I don't want to hear that that's why the Raiders had a slow start. I think just so far this season, most games they've had slow starts and they've been able to overcome that. But the Chargers is too good of a team. Yeah. Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, that offense eventually got rolling, and the Raiders just couldn't stop them.
Yeah, well, I think as far as the Booger McFarland comment, I think that just shows you why he's off the Monday night broadcast now, and that he's down on the field talking with, Susie Colbert and all them. Like, no disrespect to a fellow broadcaster, but like, he really isn't a broadcaster, first of all. He's a former player that became a broadcaster. It's a little different. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason that, he said that kind of stuff on Monday Night Football for the last couple of years, and people were like, that makes no sense, because that doesn't make any sense. But here, I'll say this. What I meant by, maybe I should amend what I said earlier about the Raiders being frauds. I think the only fraudulent thing about them is that they're not true contenders for the AFC West. That's really what it is. So when you look at the Chargers and Chiefs, that's going to be the battle we're looking at the rest of the season to see who gets the AFC West title and who gets that home game in the playoffs. And I think when you look at the Raiders now, you're looking at them just trying to make a playoff spot, because the AFC again is insane. When you look at the standings, Kansas City is number 9 right now in the playoff standings, right? Obviously, we expect that to change, but the Browns are 3-1, the Broncos are 3-1, the Ravens are 3-1. The Titans are going to make the playoffs. The Bengals are 3-1, right? And of course, you got the Bills up top, in our opinion, as the top team in the AFC. But so there's the Raiders can't go on a streak of losses here. If they still, now you're just make playoffs. I know that sounds ridiculous at 3-1, but there's 2 clear teams that are better than you in your division now. And the Raiders just need to focus on winning every single game and maybe not trying to be that undefeated team or that team that's going to, end up 15-2. You just got to find a way to make the playoffs now, because this is a tough division. And there's a lot of teams, even at the bottom of these rankings, they're still solid teams, like the New England Patriots, that you never know could end up sneaking up there, getting a bunch of wins in a row. So I think more about my fraudulent comment is that the Raiders are not AFC West champions. They're not going to be the AFC West champions. It will be the Chargers and the Chiefs, and that's a legitimate conversation we'll have for the rest of the year. And I think we'll have more after the Chiefs play the Bills, like we mentioned last week. Now, real quick, the Chiefs, again, we're not panicking, but they struggled a little bit against the Eagles, Jared. Like, they didn't. That was a back and forth game. And I'll say this, it's more of the defense, right? It's starting to turn into like
1,000%.
The defense can't handle the way the offense plays. Maybe that's what it is, because they have enough talent, but this defense can't stop anything. Like, if my Cardinals were going against the Chiefs right now, and this is trying to be as unbiased as possible, I would not be afraid to play the Chiefs because of how bad their defense is at this point and how every single team is scoring against them. The Eagles don't have a good offense, and they were able to put 30 points up against that Chiefs defense. I think that's ridiculous. And I think the Bills, this is going to be like when the Bills play the Chiefs, Jared, it's going to be not good for the Chiefs. And
that's this Sunday. That's Sunday Night Football.
Is it this Sunday? Yeah. I mean, so then we might as well talk about it. Like, I think there's a clear number 1 team in the AFC, and it's the Bills. And I think on Sunday, you're going to see it. You're going to see it because the Bills are putting up 40 every week, and I don't care who they're playing. They're putting up 40. And the Chiefs are letting 30 points every week. Like, it's going to be back. It's going to be fun Sunday night for sure. But
it's going to be hammer the over. Hammer the over.
What is the over, really quickly? What is the over?
It's probably it's in the 50s at least.
So, Jared, what do you think about, real quickly, because we do have to move on to a lot of other stuff on this podcast, what do you think about the Chiefs after that Eagles game? Just real quick.
The offense is going to score points. Patrick Mahomes, all those weapons. We don't need to go through it. We do it every single week. They're going to score points. What I'm so curious about with this defense is it's not like it's a new scheme.
Mhm.
It's not like they brought in a bunch of new players. A lot of the players that were there last year and the last 2 years for the last two championship runs, or at least getting to the Super Bowl, those runs are still on this team, right? Like yeah, obviously they've tweaked, they've added a couple pieces here and there, but like Tyrann Mathieu still there, Chris Jones is still there, Frank Clark is still there, Anthony Hitchens, their middle linebacker, is still there, right? Like their corners are. So to me, I'm looking at the team and I'm saying, you know this scheme. Steve Spagnuolo has been there for a couple years now. I don't understand why they are playing so poorly when you've had some of that consistent continuity for the last couple of years. I could understand it a little bit more if it was a different defensive coordinator, or if they kind of retooled that defense and Tyrann Mathieu, kind of the captain of that secondary, or that entire defense, wasn't there, right? But they still have now. I will say they have moved their all pro defensive tackle Chris Jones to defensive end,
Yeah.
which he has never played before in his
Not
life.
working.
And I would say that's stupid,
Yeah.
because he has made the all pro and the Pro Bowl and made his money as a defensive tackle. So, I mean, not to say that he's not versatile enough to play defensive end, but he is almost exclusively playing defensive end. So why he's not playing his natural position of defensive tackle, I have no idea. Maybe that's a reason why their run defense is so porous. But as far as just their overall defense being bad, my hands are in the air. I don't know, because
Yeah.
it's the same players that have been there for the last couple of years. So it could just be one of those things maybe where they're just starting off early. Like they know that their offense is so good. They know that their team is good, and they're kind of just going through the motions. It's an early season. There's an extra game this year. I don't know. Maybe they're just like playing more of a vanilla defense and saving some of their stuff for later. I'm throwing things out there right now because I simply just don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't really know either, because like I said, it is there. The star players are still there, and it's just, maybe it's a little bit of what I said last year, almost on the defensive end, right? Remember, I was talking about a little bit how I thought that, Patrick Mahomes was kind of maybe not into it, or he was kind of, that it was getting to his head a little bit that he was the best player in the league, right? And so maybe that happened to the defense a little bit, like this year, where like, oh, we're the Chiefs, we get to the Super Bowl every year, we can do whatever we want because the offense will always score. And now they're like, Patrick Mahomes is sitting there like, what are we doing? I can't score 42 points every game. Like
Well, yeah,
maybe we could.
They can.
They can, but there's going to be those games where the mistakes happen, and it's like eventually, the offensive line isn't as good as it was last year. Like it just, for the Chiefs, they need to figure it out, and I think they can because they have all the same guys. So just figure it out, right? Like it's like you look at the Dodgers every year in baseball, or you look at like these teams that are really good every year. Like they tend to figure it out, and sometimes they don't. It looks like right now it's not going to be the Chiefs' year, and there are teams that are better than them in the NFL, and even in their own division. That there might be a team better than them in the Los Angeles Chargers, and they need to watch out because last year that wasn't the way. And then again, Jared, also, yeah, like we're mentioning, the AFC West is just better this year, and so they're going to have a tougher road to the Super Bowl, to the playoffs, than they normally do. Let's transition to into our next part of this podcast, and that is more discussion about things happening off the field, and also rookies in the NFL. The only team we haven't talked about so far in the AFC West is the Denver Broncos, and we're not going to do this whole podcast where we go through every division, but we wanted to talk about the AFC West because it's very interesting right now. The most interesting thing about the Denver Broncos last week, though, was Vic Fangio and John Harbaugh going at it after the game, because the Broncos looked like trash, and they did what we all kind of thought they would, is not score a lot of points against a good team, right? The Denver Broncos. And if you look at who the Broncos played to start the season, there's a reason they were 3-0. Anybody would have been 3-0 for them, and they showed that they're clearly not one of the top teams in the NFL. But Jared, why don't you get into what happened after the game and what led up to the little skirmish between John Harbaugh and Vic Fangio?
Well, so Coach John Harbaugh, he is very much a, he looks at the records. He looks at the history, especially of not only his own team, but records across the NFL. And the Ravens have some interesting records that they currently hold. One of them is the record for the longest active winning streak in the preseason, right? I think it's up to like 18 or 19 games or something, which obviously doesn't mean anything. I mean, it means that you have some good depth at the back end of your roster, because most of the times in the preseason, it's your starters that are not playing and it's your backup guys, right? So kudos to them for having the longest active winning streak in the preseason. Good job. And the other record that they seem to have right now is the longest game streak of 100-yard rushing games, right? And that was in jeopardy. I believe they were at like 97 yards at the end of the game when they were beating Denver handily by more than double-digit points. And usually in a situation where your offense has the ball, right, and there's less than 2 minutes, Denver didn't have any timeouts, so they can't do anything about it. You kneel down, right? 1 or 2 kneel downs, game over, you shake hands, you go on your own separate ways. Well, Coach John Harbaugh was probably informed, hey, our running game streak is on the line here. Like, we need to get 3 more yards to cross that 100-yard barrier for the game and extend that streak. So, he tells Lamar Jackson, who also thinks that they're going to take a knee, hey, no, take the ball, quarterback keeper, run to the left and try to pick up some yards. The Denver defense, they didn't even have 11 players in the field. I think they had like 9 or 10 because they just thought the Ravens were going to kneel down and game over, right? So there's a camera that's on the Broncos sideline directly behind Vic Fangio, and he is dumbfounded. He's yelling some things that we can't yell on this podcast. Yeah. He's heated. He's saying, oh, we need to get more guys in the field, right? Because he thinks that they're going to actually run a play and he doesn't want to potentially give up another touchdown. So the play happens. Lamar Jackson runs for 5 yards. They pass that 100-yard threshold. They extend their streak. Vic Fangio is hot on the sideline, continuing to curse up a storm. I don't know if Vic Fangio and John Harbaugh shook hands after the game. I didn't have the footage of that. But in the post-game press conference, Vic Fangio kind of went off and basically said, this doesn't surprise me. This is something that I know that John Harbaugh would do. And I think he was a little butthurt. I think the reason he was butthurt was because his team got their ass kicked and they didn't play well, right? And if they were playing well and were either winning this game or in a more competitive situation, that situation with the Ravens probably wouldn't have happened. So if Vic Fangio has anyone to blame, he should blame himself and his team for not playing so damn well. I have no problem with it.
Jared, we're gonna disagree on this 100%. I think this was absolute BS by John Harbaugh. Okay, and here's the reason. Jared, I'm not disagreeing with you. Like I said, I think the Denver Broncos were trash today. I think they showed who we thought they were, right? And it was a team that can't score much against good teams and has Teddy Bridgewater as their star quarterback right now, right? And I guess it was Drew Lock for a lot of this game too, which would show again why they didn't score. But when you look at the situation, Jared Smith, okay, John Harbaugh's one of his excuses for doing what he did at the end of the game, obviously was to get the 100 yards, which they did. They were successful. He also said, did the Broncos think they were going to get a 16-point touchdown at the end of the game? Okay, well, this is where this doesn't make sense, okay, because I'll tell you this, when you actually look at the way the play-by-play and the way this game went, the Denver Broncos were down by 16 on their last drive of the game, okay? They got to what I believe was, let's just get it perfect. They were on the 5-yard line, and Drew Lock threw an interception. Jared, 16 points is a 2-possession game, right? It's not like they were down by 17 and this game was over. Like, if they would have scored, got 2-point conversion, and then got the onside kick, they could have tied the game. This is a normal NFL. Like, why would you not try to come back? If Tom Brady was doing it, we wouldn't have given him. So the fact that Harbaugh says that, like, the fact the Broncos were trying to score in a 2-possession game was Bush League? No, it's not. Okay, what was Bush League is John Harbaugh. And here's the thing. Again, we know the Harbaughs, right, Jerry? We know the Harbaughs can get a little weird. They're football guys. They're 100% just football. And sometimes I think it gets a little bit in their head, these little dumb things like this 100-yard rushing stuff. Like, I get it from the Harbaughs, but I also get it from Vic Fangio. And Vic Fangio, they didn't play well, but they were trying to come back. They threw an interception attempting to come back. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. What's wrong is that when you're supposed to kneel, you don't kneel, and it's not like you were backed up too far in the end zone either, to where you couldn't literally kneel or it'd be a safety, right? There was enough room for him to actually still kneel. So I don't want to hear this from John Harbaugh that it was Bush League. The Broncos were trying to come back in a game. I think he should have just trash talked him instead and been like, oh, the Broncos were such crap today that they look at them. They tried to come back. And so, we have more important things to do. But to say it was Bush League for the Broncos to come back was BS, and then run a literal BS play. Like, you can't do that. You can't do that, Jared Smith.
See,
it's going to come back and bite him and Lamar Jackson. I'm telling you that right now. Here's what I'll call. I'll call this. Broncos are going to, or excuse me, the Ravens are going to win the AFC North. Okay. They're going to be a home team in the playoffs, and they're going to end up somehow playing the Broncos in the first round. And we're going to get a rematch, and the Ravens will still probably win, but it's going to be the storyline is going to be, the hate between the two teams. And they're going to be going after Lamar Jackson. I'll tell you that right now. Because Lamar Jackson had a part of this too. Lamar Jackson got to choose if he wanted to go on fourth down. He could have chose not to run that play too at the end of the game, right, Jared?
Hey,
Lamar Jackson.
Coach calls a play, you got to execute it, man.
True.
Right? I mean, as great as Lamar Jackson is, he's not calling his own plays out there. So he was just doing what the coach said. I mean, I can't fault Lamar Jackson for doing that. Listen, I also can't argue with those comments that John Harbaugh made in the post-game press conference. That was kind of stupid. You're right. I mean, you at that point you just go full bull, right? Yeah. You just hammer him. You don't kind of walk it back or you say anything else. The one thing I will say about the Ravens is they are a running football team. Like, that is what they do first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, right? They've led the league, or at least been top 3 in the league for the last multiple years, ever since Lamar Jackson's been their quarterback, and rushing. So that's the main reason why I think it is significant for them specifically. It's not like they're the Chiefs and they're known for Patrick Mahomes throwing 400 yards a game, and it's like, oh, we have a chance to get 5 games in a row of 100 yards rushing. Like, that would be a little more weird, and I think uncalled for. But in this sense, I don't have a problem with it, because running the football is the Baltimore Ravens' identity. And I think, specifically from John Harbaugh's standpoint, he wanted to keep that streak going, to say we are the kings of the NFL when it comes to the running game. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm going to still kind of hang my hat on the fact that the Broncos just played like crap. And if they would have played better during the game, they probably wouldn't have been in this situation. Even Kareem Jackson, the starting safety for the Broncos, was asked in a post-game interview about the situation. And he said, I don't give a bleep. I think you can figure out what he said there. He's like, I don't give a bleep about that last play, more so care about the plays through the game.
I love that.
Saying we didn't play well enough, right? Yeah. So if the players don't really care about it, I think the coach needs to get over it and get back into the film room and try to figure out why his team didn't play well during the game.
Yeah,
that's where I am.
Speaking of coaches doing dumb things, Jared, let's transition into the next thing we're going to talk about. Urban Meyer. Obviously you guys, apparently a lot of people watched Thursday Night Football last week, even though it was Bengals and Jaguars. I think it was over 8-9 million, something like that, which was one of the top ratings for Thursday Night Football ever. A lot of people watched Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars kind of blow a game against the Cincinnati Bengals. And then, Jared, once again, I'll turn it to you. What did Urban Meyer decide to do after his team blew their 4th game in a row and went to 0-4 and are still clearly the worst team in the NFL? What did Urban Meyer decide to do?
So I'm going to preface this by saying I've only seen a picture.
Okay.
There's apparently video out there of Urban Meyer, and I also don't know the date when this happened. Like, obviously the Jaguars played on Thursday, so they had this weekend off. But apparently this video was taken in Ohio at Urban Meyer's restaurant. So I'm assuming that, the team and everyone had the weekend off, and, Urban Meyer went back to Ohio, where I'm assuming he still has a home and all that stuff. And in the picture, there are 2 women who look relatively young, college students, early 20s. Definitely not Urban Meyer's wife, right? Who appeared to be very close to him. And in the still picture, it looks like one is either sitting right next to him or hugged up all over him. And, everyone's smiling and having a good time. Uh, Now, could be, if you just had no idea, could be his daughters, right? But I think obviously when the video surfaced, which once again I haven't seen, it's clear that those were not his daughters when they were basically dancing on
Yeah,
his lap.
Jared.
Now,
Let me just say this right now. And in post production, people are going to be able to see what you're talking about. It's as bad as you think. Like this
okay,
is
okay,
it's if it's his daughters, someone needs to call the cops first of all, okay? Because this is not appropriate to be happening. And it's not his wife because I know what his wife looks like. And so, yeah, it's as bad as you guys think. And you're watching it right now, or I played a clip because obviously we don't want to get kicked off YouTube, but I think it's under 7 seconds. I'm watching it here on Twitter, and I'll put it in post production, like I said. So I'll be able to fit it in the podcast real quick, like I did with my brother's touchdown too. I put that in last week as well. Yeah, Jared. I mean, I think on this is ridiculous from Urban Meyer. Okay, I get it's your own restaurant, that's fine, but like, first of all, why are you going like? Why aren't you going home to your team after the game? Like, is this what he used to do in college? I don't understand ever a football coach staying back to hang out with his family. Like what? What other
well,
NFL coach, Jared, do you think, besides the end of a football season, obviously, do you think is going to hang out with family at essentially a bar and restaurant after his team blows their biggest game of the year? I can't think of one that's in the NFL.
do we know? Do we have a timestamp of when this video was, or what? Like, was it the day after? Was it the night after the game? Because we don't know. I mean, Urban Meyer could have flown home with the team,
Well, no, but think about this, Jared.
right?
Think about it this way,
Obviously,
though. They live in Jacksonville and they played in Ohio. He must have just never left Ohio, right?
I know that's
Yeah.
I'm I guess trying to not cover, but trying to give him the smallest benefit of the doubt and saying that he could have flown back with the team, said, all right, guys, you guys have the weekend off or whatever, gone through the film, and then flown back home for the weekend. Could have. That is the only thing. You're right. If he stayed in Ohio while the rest of the team flew back to Jacksonville, I mean, every single week now, it's that monkey's starting to get bigger and bigger, and I think that that USC job is potentially starting to look a little brighter
I'll
these
say it,
days
Jared.
than maybe it was week one.
Uh,
As a USC fan, I'm not saying I want it under these circumstances, but the trust factor between Urban Meyer and the organization, the willingness. Does he really want to be there? Was this a publicity stunt? I don't know. There are too many questions and not enough answers right now, and I think that is the main issue. At least if we had answers, we could have something to go off of and something to talk about. But right now, we've got a million questions and not a lot of answers.
well, yeah, I think obviously this is the thing with Urban Meyer has been the whole season has been about Urban Meyer, and that's not the way it should be, right? Like it's okay if one game Harbaugh and Vic Fangio go at it; they're head coaches, right? If Vic Fangio starts complaining about everything after every single game, then it becomes the Vic Fangio show, right? If John Harbaugh keeps calling Bush League plays, it becomes the John Harbaugh show. But that probably won't happen next week. It seems like every single week, Urban Meyer is more of the talk than the Jacksonville Jaguars, than Trevor Lawrence, than DJ Chark, who like broke his leg in that game too. Marvin Jones Jr., anybody else you want to say, right? It's always Urban Meyer news. And like you said, Jared, I mean, everybody just expects him to take the USC job. And now that they don't have a coach, obviously that becomes more, to fruition. I think we all wanted, obviously, Clay Helton to not be the coach of the USC Trojans anymore, but he still was. Now that they don't have a coach, now that USC still looks like crap without Clay Helton, they clearly need a new head coach. And Urban Meyer had, a lot more success in college football than he has as an NFL coach. I mean, he's had no success so far. But yeah, I think, I think we almost need to start taking the, doing a little. Maybe we should start putting a ticker on the bottom of the screen here on the Cover 2 podcast. So when Urban Meyer is not going to be the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, because it almost seems like he's doing it on purpose. Now,
place your bets.
Yeah, let's place our bets, right? I think I'm going to go on my betting website right now, call my bookie, and be like, week 6. That's when it's over.
I mean, listen, you bring up a great point about,
Yeah.
overshadowing and taking the spotlight away from your team when Trevor Lawrence probably played his best game of the year so far. And obviously it's been a small sample size with only 4 games, but he threw for 204 yards, didn't have a passing touchdown, but also did not turn the ball over. He had, was it one rushing touchdown, but he was able to use his legs and his athletic ability to make things happen and sustain those Jacksonville drives. So I think there was some definite improvement from the first 3 games, and that's what we should be talking about right now. Not necessarily that we would be talking about Jacksonville versus Cincinnati, but the storyline should have been Trevor Lawrence improvement as opposed to now getting through the weekend and simply talking about Urban Meyer and these young girls dancing on his lap in his own restaurant.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's weird. Like, even I could understand, like, if he's like in the club drinking, like that'd be a whole different thing. But like, bro, like I remember his daughters being like the same age. I think they're the same age as me. So, and like the girl in the video looks like someone that's the same age as me. It's like, that's weird. Like, what are you doing? Like, I can't imagine my dad ever doing that. But like, I don't know. It's like, it's just a weird thing to do. And then also you're an NFL